we need to develop something that gauges the success of this program. And I don't know exactly how to do that. That's not my expertise, but, when they come back to us again for approval of this, we need to be able to know that we impacted the positive, success rate with X number of kids.
Absolutely. And that was a very good points. I thought about that and I asked some questions on this. Not to that point. That's a very good point. Mine was, this is a 5-year award, and these are very good. I mean, I work with communities and schools. They're amazing. But I guess I don't know if there's enough I don't know the history of who all has gotten this or how much outreach. I remember what I had a question on. So I believe it was this item that stated, and it's in general, I think this is across the board. If you are registered with our procurement system, then you would receive some sort of
notification. That's
right?
Correct.
But what if you're not? You would never know this is out there to take advantage of. Do you see what I'm saying? And
Right.
I don't know how we fix that.
So let me take Dante Gonzalez, Interim Director, Parks and Recreation. So to start off with the questions, starting with Councilman Pusley, this program is actually a state grant that is we apply for. The state, every year, they look at the numbers on specific zip codes and verify whether or not there has been some sort of progress within those zip codes. 78415 has consistently shown high numbers of juveniles within the system. And that is why we continue to be able to submit the award for this particular grant. So if there's any sort of metric to see what kind of success this is going, the state is able to track that. From our point of view, what we do with the city is we look to see within the metrics of how many juveniles and how many youth are being serviced within this grant.
Yeah, Dr. Dante, the question is really how have we reached out to other potential vendors?
Well, it's
So that's the
twofold.
second.
That was the second question.
Okay.
The first one is what you're talking about.
Okay.
But I
Right.
think Councilman Pusley is basically saying, can we see some metrics
Okay,
on?
right,
We
okay.
keep, which is great. We're getting the grant, but we're getting it because we're doing so well. How are we doing so well?
Okay.
Right.
What are
Okay.
how are they achieving
Yeah, in
it
other
through their
words,
mentorship programs?
And the second part of that question, which is for you, Mayor, is the process. It's an RFP process. It goes to contracts and procurement. It gets published not only for the individuals who have chosen this particular commodity when they get registered with the city, but it also gets published within the newspaper for a period of 2 weeks, and we do it twice. So for a period of 30 days, it's posted on the newspaper for any local entity to follow that. For this particular program, we actually ended up submitting the RFP twice. The first time around, we reached out to the community, and there was 0 applicants. The second time around, which they gave them a second opportunity to apply, we ended up receiving 3 applications, and those are the 3 applications that got funded. So there is plenty of ways that they could see that there is something being published and that's being offered, and that's the methodology that is currently being used.
Yeah, and like I said, I appreciate all that. It's just that, this is, like the mayor said, this is a 5-year program, and this is a lot of money. And so what do? Every year we look and say, okay, were there fewer kids referred to, juvenile hall versus the prior year? Or, do we look at how many kids that were maybe dropped out of school that we now have gotten back into school? There just needs to be some sort of metrics that we keep to justify doing this program on a continuing basis. Thank you.
Right.
Maybe we can get with who, did they get this last time by chance or not? The same
The
one?
same entities. There is a consistency in the entities that actually apply for it. These entities have historically received in the past.
Right.
I couldn't tell you specifically if they're one of the ones that are the only ones that received the last 5 years.
Right.
But we do have a listing of all the entities that have
Right.
applied throughout since 1996, which is when the city received this grant.
Right, and maybe you can just go back and ask them, how did you achieve, because there was a mentorship program. I mean, I'm sure the
Right, there's 4 pillars.
YWCA, all of them, keep track of, what they're doing and the success of that program.
Right.
So that would be very interesting to see.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Councilman. So, did we have a motion and a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The motion carries. Okay, item number 13 is an ordinance adding section 13-27 to Corpus Christi Code to authorize emergency demolition of dangerous building due to sudden acts. Hi, Tracy.
As Tracy's getting organized, this is another quality of life or quality of neighborhood ordinance. The City Council recently approved policy that prohibits parking on front lawns. The council's working on a tree ordinance, and the council also recently approved the policy of no laying or sleeping in right-of-way in certain sections to include downtown and other areas of the city. So this is a fourth quality of life policy issue we're bringing to City Council to improve the aesthetics and really the safety of our neighborhoods. And so, Tracy?
All right. And we have a presentation to go along with this proposed ordinance. We can get number 13. Okay, I did hand that out, but I believe Holly also said it was republished yesterday, so you should also be able to view that on your screen as well. So the proposed ordinance will allow code enforcement to move forward with an emergency demolition of structures that are damaged due to sudden acts such as, but not limited to, fire, accident, water damage, vandalism, or other occurrences that threaten the structural integrity of the building. And so this is our reasons for one. I'm sorry. Okay, the slide. Okay, they finally got it. So when is this applicable? This is when the building presents a clear and imminent danger to any person's life, safety, or property, unless the is immediately mitigated. So what is this? So this again is the expedited demolition of structures that due to sudden act has become a clear and immediate imminent danger to life, safety, and property. And I think we are. Did we get out of? I'm sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. So, and to give you a definition of imminent danger, we're looking at this. This plays off of our Section 202 of the International Property Code. Imminent danger is a condition which would cause serious or life-threatening injury or death at any time and constitute emergency measures. So why would we need to do this? This is to protect lives and the safety of citizens in Corpus Christi, to reduce blight and the deterioration caused by damaged buildings. This ordinance covers the gap between the Building Standards Board procedures of demolition for substandard structures, where emergency measures may provide us with means to secure the building, but it falls short, resulting in delay to demolish dangerous structures. And so there is a difference between a deteriorating and dilapidated building and a dangerous structure that has been deemed to be imminent danger to life and public safety. This ordinance allows for urgent action to demolish the structurally compromised building. So examples of sudden acts, they're structural defects or conditions arising from but not limited to fire, accident, water damage, vandalism, or other sudden occurrences that threaten the structural integrity of a building. This could also be applied after a severe storm that we all know is always a potential threat at this time of the year. These emergencies arise from these sudden acts and result in the structural defects and conditions. So a summary of the process is when a building has been identified as damaged or compromised due to a sudden act, the process is activated to determine if the structure is a clear and imminent danger to life, safety, or property. We will have the city building official assess the property impacted by the sudden act. The building official will deem the property a public hazard and that it cannot be repaired or renovated. Code enforcement will then send notice to the property owner with an order that the property be demolished. If the property owner does not mitigate the structure, the city will demolish the building and place a lien against the property. And this process is laid out in this ordinance, is modeled after best practices and ordinances of several other cities, specifically San Antonio, El Paso, and Freeport, that are Texas cities that have similar ordinance in effect. So the process is to utilize the ordinance when the building official deems the property a public hazard that cannot be repaired or renovated. This ordinance will bypass the current process of taking the property to the Building Standards Board due to the health and safety risks the structure imposes upon surrounding properties and the general public. So the notice that the structure has been determined to be a clear and imminent danger of life and safety will be issued. This will be affixed to the property, hand-delivered to the owner, and also mailed to the owner. The demolition. The emergency demolition may be executed no earlier than 4 days after the notice. And so once it's executed after the emergency demolition, then the official's response shall be to file the copies with the official records in the code enforcement case file, provide notice to the owner and lien holders and mortgage holders on record, and advise the board on its next regular scheduled hearing. There is an appeal process.
Tracy, can I just, if you can just go back to slide 9, because it's an important point. It wasn't so clear in the legal drafting of the ordinance, but essentially after the building official deems the building to be dangerous, the property owner has 4 days to demolish it from the notice period. Right, it's 4 days to demolish it.
At a minimum, yes, sir. Yes.
Right, period, 4 days.
Yes.
So they can appeal. They have to do that within 3 days.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make that clear. So, okay, go
All
ahead,
right, we'll
Tracy.
cover the appeal process of this, so. Okay. So within 72 hours of notice, there is an appeal process built in that allows the property owner to submit a written request for a hearing for reconsideration of the building official's declaration that the property is a public hazard and that cannot be repaired or renovated. The Director of Development Services or designee shall hear the appeal and determine to sustain or revoke the building official's order. The property owner may also submit a written plan of action to stabilize the structure. This plan shall be developed by a structural engineer registered in the state. And in discussion with Councilman Pusley, we did discuss adding that this is a licensed structural engineer with the state of Texas, just for point of clarification in the ordinance. So we told him, I believe we can accommodate that and add that to the language. So if the Director of Development Services approves the plan of action, the plan must be implemented by the property owner within 24 hours of approval. So our recommendation is approving the ordinance that will allow code enforcement to move forward with an expedited timeline for an emergency demolition within 5 to 7 days of the notice that the structure has been determined to be a clear and imminent danger to life and safety. This is a much faster process than the Building Standard Board demolition process used for regular cases. Okay. From the appeal period.
Right, yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay,
I would keep the
apologize.
two separate, the appeals process, the demolition process. The
Yes.
demolition process is once notice is issued that it's a dangerous structure, the owner has 4 days to
Has 4
demolish it.
days, yes.
However, if they do the appeal process, that could add a few days on. That's why you have the 7, right?
Yes,
But I think pretty much what happens is that people aren't going to appeal. It's too far gone, and the cost to rehab, it's going to be too pricey. But we wanted to give that option, that appeal process to be, give the owner one more chance, if you will.
yes, sir. You give them an option. Okay. All right. So again, this allows code enforcement to act faster versus the typical process that takes approximately 3 months due to state laws governing the Building Standards Board procedure. There's 2 months for the notice and the hearing, and 1 month to allow the owner to demolish. So again, this will expedite the timeline for the emergency demolition if approved. Rejecting the proposed ordinance would result in no alternative for emergency situations. Code enforcement would continue to use the Building Standards Board process as it is. So I will stand by for questions.
And then just one final comment, Mayor, and I'll turn it over to the Mayor and Council. So what this does is it puts on our books, if you will, an ordinance that helps protect life and safety, protects our environment, our neighborhoods, and it puts us in line with cities that have done this decades ago. And so San Antonio, that was our example that we modeled this after. It was over a decade ago that they've had this on their books. So we're just trying to get caught up with some of the other big Texas cities by using best
Right.
practice remediation efforts to protect life safety in our neighborhoods.
Right. No, there's a lot of things we're still trying to bring up to date, and that's what we're going to do.
And I can offer a couple other examples where this would be applicable and appropriate. I had spoken with Councilman Hernandez, and we talked about a couple of properties, fire damage properties on Comanche. And they were both two separate situations. The first at 1902, this property went before the board. However, there was continual legal review because there was additional tax liens that kept getting placed against that property, which delayed the process of the board's order for demolition. So it delayed it further and further and further. So that was to answer your question about that particular structure. There was another structure on Comanche. Actually, the owner acted very quickly to take care of that. We had offered them a demolition grant, and they actually reached out and received the grant from the GLO. And so the owner demolished that structure. So in this case, they acted quickly to remedy the situation. We currently have a property on Bolivar that had sustained significant fire damage and actually reignited twice. So putting the neighboring properties in imminent danger, as you will. Now, we are working with that property owner. We're working on cleaning up the property. They're working with them through the process for the demolition grant. However, if this ordinance was in place, we would already be taking action to eliminate that danger for the neighbors of that neighborhood.
Okay. Councilman Hernandez.
Okay, so I'm looking at the verbiage here, and thank you for providing an information on the what is imminent danger. However, I think that should probably be part of the ordinance as to define it. However, you have the timeframes of 24 hours, 72 hours, and 96 hours. Does this include weekends, or is this business days? So these are calendar days. So
yeah.
if your house burns on Thursday, inspector comes out on Friday, you're supposed to have something by Monday with a structural engineer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I don't know about you, but the structural engineers I know don't work weekends. I think that's probably reflective of, we're not giving people the appropriate time frame here. I think that should be business days, not calendar days.
Part of the issue, Councilman, is it could be extremely dangerous, so we could wait, but it also could.
Well, if it's
impact somebody's
extremely
life.
dangerous, we fence off the area, right?
Even that, though, kids get in there, people get in, vagrants get in.
I mean, I just, how do you respond to something if there's no way you can respond to it, right? You can't even get a structural engineer to show up within, if you're lucky, they'll show up within 3 days of business days. I'm just I'm looking at it from a practical sense of like, anytime an ordinance comes up, I throw myself in the shoes of the person that would be affected by it. Okay, it's not that I don't, I look at it from our perspective, but I also try to put myself into their shoes. I'm thinking about the home that's on Comanche, right? That had all those issues, and like, well, the porch was coming down. That was probably something that needed to be demolished relatively quickly, but it sat there for 2 years, something like that. Okay, that aside, one, how many people know structural engineers or know where to go get one? I happen to know one. I could probably give him a call, and he could probably come up.
They could call us, Councilman. I mean,
Right,
we're going to be
saying-
right there with them, helping them out through this process.
Yeah.
Okay, who's
It's
going to
not
answer
like
the phone on Saturday?
We do. They'll call me. I answer the phone around the clock.
You are. You're
Really?
going to answer the
I-
phone.
You
People
know
call
what?
me around
They're
every
going to
day.
call me. So like, hey, I got this notice on Friday. I got to have an answer by Monday.
Forward it to me. We'll take care of it.
Well,
Yeah,
you say that.
No, I do. I answer the call.
But we can also, look at this at a case by case. I mean, that's the reason we have the discretion from the Director of Development Services. And look at this. Obviously, you can't get an instructional engineer on a weekend. But let's be reasonable. Let's let common sense prevail. But we
Right.
need to act as quickly as we can. We want to open that line of communication. That's the most important part of sending that notice, is to get that owner to talk with
Well,
us, and we will work with them through
I understand
that
the need for
process.
expediency, but I think we do a disservice if we do this without the understanding of how the real world works, and whether we call Peter or not is immaterial. Last time I checked, you didn't have the PE at the end of your name, Peter.
Well, no, I'm not going to do the PE judgment. I'm going to get somebody that can help them. But that will come after, that process comes after it's deemed to be structurally unsound by one of our building officials.
Right.
So there'll be a
Right. So like I
constant
said,
communication process.
your house is on fire on Thursday. I'm assuming we go and look at it the following day,
Yeah.
Friday, and then you're given the notice on Friday afternoon. Okay, well that doesn't give you a lot of time to try and figure out what to do over the weekend. I don't have a problem with the time frames. I just think they should be business days.
But you can appeal that process. You have 72 hours to appeal it, right?
But how do you appeal it if you have nothing to base it on? If you need a structural engineer to get, I mean, if we're only going to accept information,
that stops everything, right?
if we're only going to
Yeah.
accept information from a structural engineer, which is what I heard, then how do you get that guy to come over the weekend?
You can appeal for reconsideration without the structural engineer. Your plan to stabilize the structure must have a structural engineer.
So only if you plan on stabilizing.
A straight appeal doesn't require the structural engineer. It's just, but if you're going to have a plan to back it up, a stabilization plan, that is what requires the structural engineer.
Correct.
So this entirely circumvents the council altogether.
In what way?
All the building standard board procedures do.
Right.
Well, I know when you go to appeal, it comes to the council, right?
Right, but that's,
So there's no appeal process to come to the council.
no, for time's sake. The goal is, look, these structures are highly unsafe. We're trying to protect life, and then we're trying to remedy the situation quickly also for blight. What we've seen is they'll stay up for months and months and months. In some cases, like
You're
you
right.
showed, 2 years.
I don't have a problem with the ordinance.
Right.
I have problems with having calendar days as opposed to business
Well,
days.
so that, as we just clarified, they can appeal to the Development Services Director. Say it's a late Saturday, and they say, I want to appeal this, I think I can get a structural engineer. The building official will say, okay, it's Sunday, we'll start the clock on Monday. Get your 72 hours for the structural engineer, begins Monday.
Okay, well, that's putting a lot of discretion. I don't know if that's actually going to happen.
Well, we can write
So,
that into the ordinance.
from my perspective, like I said, the time frames are okay as long as they're business days,
Okay.
not calendar days.
Okay.
So if I could, I don't know, are there more questions?
Well, we do. We have
Okay.
quite a few.
I'd like to make a
So,
motion, an amendment.
Councilman Pesley.
Go back to page 5. Okay. The list here, fire, accident, water damage, vandalism, or sudden occurrences. So what if the building has been abandoned for a long period of time, and for whatever reason, it becomes structurally unsound and creates, where does that get covered? In other words, you could have a rainstorm event that hits a building that's been abandoned for a long
Correct.
time and collapse the roof, and then all of a sudden that building becomes unstable. I guess, well, you've got water damage in here.
Yes, sir.
I guess I'm thinking out loud a little bit here, Tracy, about in the case of, where you have an abandoned building or any building really that is abandoned, and I'm thinking more of abandoned buildings.
Right, and again, these are just examples. It's not an all-inclusive list. The thought process would be if you have an abandoned building, that we would have started the substandard building process against that building
Already.
We would already have that in place. Now, if something were to happen during that process, and now that building has shifted on its piers and suddenly leaning to the side, that becomes a sudden act. It may not be a clearly defined sudden act, but that would fall within the parameters of this ordinance and allow us to take action instead of waiting for the next building standards board when this maybe potentially was going to be presented.
Okay. Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Barrera.
Thank you, Mayor. Did we look at any coastal communities to look for any ordinances that were similar, such as, I don't know, Freeport, Lake Jackson, Galveston? And the reason for my question is, of course, if we had a hurricane hit, and, once again, I just think that we need to be conscientious of that. Obviously, if a hurricane hit, we'd already be in, a disaster, I guess we'd be prepared for that, and we would have a difficult time doing this. I guess my concern is, or what I would look to at least somehow address, is that, we've had people that are stranded outside of the community for a couple of weeks, in essence, that we've had a major hurricane or something of that nature. And rather than just posting a placard, we need to make sure to contact the property owner or to find out if, because I know that's happened. I've lived here, all but 4 of 55 years of my life, and I've encountered a couple of hurricanes, and I know that there's times that family has had a difficult time coming back into town simply because to be able to manage that. But the whole area is probably going to be a disaster.
Right.
The challenge is that we just need to protect, and I can see that you're very passionate about this. Okay, I can see that you're very passionate about this, as I. I remember when we had the chat about, there's been 2 times that something's come before us that was before I guess that came back to us, where I had exactly said, what about the rights of the neighbors and the safety of the neighbors and the safety of the neighborhood?
Right.
So I'm with you, Mike, once again, but is there a way to address in a disaster such as a hurricane to ensure that those individuals are protected? Because if somebody's stuck out of town for 2 weeks,
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
No,
and
I'm sorry.
and it's in an area, maybe it's part of the community, it's a certain segment of the community. I mean, Rockport and Aransas Pass are only up the street, so go ahead.
Now, code enforcement is part of your initial damage assessment team. So immediately following the storm, they are part of that ride-out team that goes out to assess the damage of these properties. So they will be part of that group that will know right away. And they receive their training, and they are also accompanied by our engineering staff, development services staff. So there will be assessments done following, post-storm, and they are some of the first ones on scene where we've sustained damage. And so those structures are going to be assessed immediately following that storm event. And so and they've got their checklist and their assessment list, and we'll know which ones of these structures would qualify as an imminent danger, which one could be just take emergency measures to secure, which one might just have sustained damage that now becomes just a substandard structure. And so the different notification processes would follow there depending on what level of damage that structure has sustained.
I'm with you there,
Let's
Tracy.
let's hear from Buck, Councilman. I'm gonna
Councilman, so this ordinance, the staff has discretion. They don't, just because the building's been hit by a hurricane, it doesn't mean they have to go out and say, oh, we're knocking it down no matter what. I think in the event of a Harvey or something like that, one, I don't think staff would have the capacity to do
I would agree with
this.
that.
But even if they did have the capacity, I think they would use their discretion and recognize that we just can't go knocking down buildings because people aren't there because they've been evacuated.
Yeah, Councilman, I think we could, you have a good point. I mean, we modeled this after inland cities. So I think we could add a section in there, add a sentence or two that says, if the area is impacted by a hurricane and there's significant damage, meaning more than one structure,
Yeah.
then I don't know what the then is. Then we additional discretion and owners' rights come into play, something like that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's
Yeah.
been
Maybe
that,
Buck can help us. Okay.
Yeah, I'd enter into some of that language because once
Yeah.
again, you've got people that once again they can't come back to address.
Exactly.
Or that
And we're not going to have. You said it too. We're not going to. Somebody said we're not going to have the capacity to just start.
Yeah,
tearing down
I
all
agree
these
with that. I
properties.
agree with
And-
that.
and
But
But to safeguard
Yeah.
it, we can put that section in for the final read.
okay, thank you.
And that's what I was trying to allude to. I mean, yes, code enforcement is going to be out there, so they're going to be aware of it. But like I said, we understand that this is going to be a mass situation, and so there needs to be those provisions there. But they are part of that assessment, so they'll know where those
No,
structures
I'm with
are.
you, Tracy, but my
Yeah.
my component is that once again the rights of the property owner
Yes,
in
sir.
the event that they're
Yeah,
not able.
we're not going to turn around and, in 2
As long
days.
as that's addressed in the ordinance, that's all I'm
Yes, sir.
concerned.
Yeah, we'll put that in the for the second read.
Excellent, excellent. I appreciate
you.
that.
I'm talking to Miles about it right now.
Councilman Molina.
Thank you, Mayor. Tracy, this presentation wasn't showing up on our apps.
Okay.
And Neiman was kind enough to send me one, but I think you might need to maybe look at how the presentations are uploaded, because this is the second one that I've gotten
Okay.
from your department that has not shown up properly. But in any case, yeah, yeah. It looks like a Xerox copy on my iPad, and it's hard to read. Yeah. And you touched on one of my questions here about existing buildings. So can you walk me through the process if I have a dilapidated building on Staples that is boarded up, but it's missing windows and it's got the roof caving in? What's the process? I guess someone calls code enforcement on my property, and then you send staff out, and then they make the judgment that it would fall under this ordinance.
Again, if it was assessed where it looked like there's imminent danger, and then that's where we would engage with the building official to bring him out to assess this building and make a declaration if in fact it can be determined that there is imminent danger from this building, and there's threat to life and property and safety. And then once that declaration is made, then a notice is sent to the owner at that point in time to notify them.
Okay, so first the declaration is made, then second the notice is sent to the property owner, and then once the property owner has that notice, they have how many? 3 days
They have
to appeal?
72 hours to request an appeal, to appeal that decision. And so that appeal is heard by the Director of Development Services. And so he will determine whether to sustain or revoke that declaration.
Okay, and so after 72 hours, the appeal is made and it's sustained. What happens then?
And so, again, no sooner than 4 days. If that is sustained, then code enforcement will begin to take action to demolish that structure.
Within 4 days after the 72 hours?
It won't happen before 4 days, so it wouldn't happen before the 96 hours, because you have to have the appeal. So, and then you have the appeal has to be heard by the director to either sustain or revoke. So,
Okay.
so the emergency demolition would not take place until no sooner than 4 days after the notice, until the appeal is
Okay.
okay.
And then, so once the building has been deemed to be demolished, city will hire someone to go out there and demolish the building,
Yes.
and then the bill will be sent to the property owner, and if they don't pay it, then it's a lien against the property.
Yes.
Is that right?
It would be placed as a lien. Yes.
Okay. I think I'm clear on that. And the only other input I have is that I'm not opposed to changing it from calendar days to business days. I think that's fair to the property owner. So if that is part of the discussion, I think I would support that. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Molina. And I think Councilman Smith he's got a comment.
He does. That's my understanding. Mr. Smith? Greg? He's on
You
his...
hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Oh, okay, thank you. On there. So, thanks. I appreciate coming forward with this. I agree with the business days on there rather than calendar days. Also, the 72 hours, I'm a little bit concerned about that. Could we change that to days? So we might be sitting there, well, was it 69 hours? Was it 75? Days just seem cleaner than hours. When did you get the notice? on there. And then a question on the ordinance itself. In item 2, notice that the structure has been determined to be a clear and imminent danger to life and safety may be issued, and then we have A, B, and C. A being placard, B hand delivery, or C mail. Does that require us to do all of those, or any one of those, or the fact that we use may, can we do something else? Miles, how's that legally?
You have to do one of those, because keep in mind, if you're doing the hand delivery, you don't have to do that if they're not in Nueces County. But one of those, because often these buildings have really iffy ownership. I mean, you just don't know who owns the building. So the placard affixed to the property always gets you there. For minimum due process, I will always recommend that if there is a property owner that that is in the property records, you send them a notice as well. But the ordinance itself requires one of the three, A, B, or C, to be met.
But I will add to that.
Thank you.
Councilman, I will add to that code enforcement will attempt to do all three, and that is standard with the current process for substandard structures. We will affix the placard, we will attempt to hand deliver, and we will mail a notice so that we are providing due diligence.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Tracy, but that's not codified on there. Are there any properties that the appraisal district doesn't have a address for?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Are there any properties that the appraisal district does not have a address for?
Yeah, you'll find properties that have a iffy address. You also find corporate owners where the corporations are defunct.
If you look up the appraisal district, is there an address?
I think there's probably quite a few properties where they don't have a current address.
In that case, we use
That's more of a code enforcement question.
A address.
Yes, sir. And if there's not an address, the appraisal district still shows the legal description of the property, and we can still identify it using those means. And the tax identification number on that property, because we do encounter properties that are called landlocked, but they still are assigned a legal property description and a tax ID number.
Okay, and so the appraisal district's not taxing these because they don't have any place to mail a statement to?
Well,
I guess the point I'm trying to make, I'm concerned about the placard and the staking, and I fully appreciate what you're saying, contacting all three, but as times change and staff changes, and I think that needs to be reflected in the ordinance. I would be much more comfortable if we just had B and C on there, because we are talking about demo on somebody's property and not have only A. Miles said that's acceptable to it, and and in certain circumstances it can be behind a tree, or we'll hear that excuse with it on there. Well, I didn't see a stake; somebody pulled it up. Where B is a hand delivery, that is absolutely great. I mean, we got time and record, and C, it probably ought to be certified mail. With it, so it protects us as a city. We go demoing somebody's and property on there, and then they say, "Oh well, I never got it." At least if we're certified on there, we have proof that we sent it out, and we have the appraisal district's last address that they send the tax statements to.
Yeah,
we can do that, Councilman. We can put all three, except in the case that they're not local. Like if they're in Alaska, we're not going to drive up there, but at least they'll get the two.
Yeah,
So
we send certified mail on there.
Yeah.
Sure.
well, I would recommend we have a tempt language if there is a good situs. Quite often you don't have a good situs for a person, or there's a corporate entity that's defunct. It's very often, or there's a person that's dead. So there's a lot of times there's just not an address that you can send anything to.
But we'll say that, but the
Well,
ordinance
we-
will say, but the ordinance will say we have to make the attempt to do all three.
And I would
Right,
recommend by
exactly.
first class mail, because if you really want to actually reach somebody, usually first class is better than certified because nobody picks up the certified mail.
Yeah,
Post
we find
office
that.
will no longer have first classer though. They're getting rid of
Yeah,
first class mail.
well,
They really are.
and
Really?
Miles,
Okay.
if we've got a time limit, don't we need proof that we sent it out?
We do have the time limit. We send and we normally wait a period of time for certified. We never really expect people to pick up their certified mail. It's almost just pro forma. First class mail is the only mail that is probably likely to actually reach a human.
Okay, so I'm just trying to protect the city, Miles. So we've got, whether it's business days, calendar days, hours, or days on there, what do we have to prove that the clock started on the notice, certified or regular mail, that we followed the ordinance and properly noticed?
We can write C so that we always attempt to do that by mail.
Yeah.
But the one that we can always guarantee is the placard because we can take a picture of that placard on the property. We can always guarantee that we put notice to the property. We can't guarantee that any human will ever receive any kind of notice because it's very, very common. Those people are dead or it's a corporate entity that's defunct.
Well, if I think you can put the placard on there, but we need to have mail notice
Regardless.
on there or hand delivered. I just have a huge issue of placard only with it.
Well, and that's
Somebody,
okay.
They on vacation for 7 days, and boom, they come down and their house is bulldozed.
Well, and that's okay, but I think we need to put attempt.
Okay.
Well,
So well, let me,
We're gonna
we've got
change that.
people in line here.
Yeah.
Mr.
Okay,
Hernandez
thank you.
and then
I'm
Mr.
good.
Pusley.
I think I'm sorry, I think Councilman Lormer was going to mention about the mail.
Yeah, there's two options with the mail that you can guarantee.
Giving up your spot.
Okay?
I'm letting him because he was a
know.
postal worker, so.
He's always.
You know,
yes.
Certified mail with return receipt will let you know if they received it. The post office then guarantees it 10 days that it will be returned back if nobody signs for it. And it'll have on there written, no response or no contact. The other way you can send it also is registered mail. You know, registered mail, it's actually that the post office will guarantee that it was delivered to the address that's on there, and you will get a notification saying it was delivered, hand delivered to them. Okay? They don't have to sign for it, but the post office guarantees through the postal employee that they hand delivered that note to that address that you have on it. And those are the two options that you also have that can guarantee that somebody received it.
And you're absolutely right. That's what we do when we're sending out, say, an official notice. And then we send it and we wait the 5 days, and then we get the notice back that they weren't able to deliver in that 5-day period. We also send those typically by first class so that when you have the person who's, they see anybody in a uniform come close to their door, they never open it, that they will,
Right.
that they can receive that mail as well.
Okay.
Okay, so
Mr. Hernandez.
I'd like to make an amendment.
Don't you have
And
we
Miles,
have
ma-
another question, sir.
Okay.
I'll let you know when it's time.
all right.
How about that?
I'll wait.
Go ahead.
Look, I'm just going to say, let's not make this overly complicated
We already did.
until we, I mean, good grief. I will give you a couple of real-world examples. We had difficulty having a clear title to the old courthouse. The old courthouse does not have clear title, and the reason why is because the last people who owned it all died. They formed a corporation, and I'll take that back. They all died except one guy, and he lived on an island in the Bahamas, and he didn't return phone calls, mails, if you got within a mile of him, he'd sick dogs on you. So, from his dog, whatchamacallit?
Dog park.
Yeah, from his
We have a
dog
beautiful
park.
dog park.
Yeah,
in
his
front of
dog
his
park.
house.
But you can get in a situation where you're trying to contact somebody like that, where it gets very difficult when you're trying to do you know, what you have to almost do is go hire a process server to try to look those people up and figure out where they're at, because if they know the city's trying to serve them to enforce some ordinance, trust me, they're not going to answer the door, they're not going to return their mail, they're not going to do any of that stuff. That's how it works in the real world. So let's don't make this overly complicated until we try it out and see how it's going to work.
Okay, now, Councilman Hernandez.
Okay, and I asked Miles on this question here. There are several instances where it says 72 hours, 24 hours, 72 hours, 96 hours. Can I do a blanket statement saying I'd like to amend it to reflect 24 hours, 72 hours, and 96 hours should reflect to say 1 business day, 3 business days, or 4 business days, or do I have to do it by section?
If you will tell us that's what, if the council states that they would prefer that the hours be stated in days, we'll come back with that.
Okay.
And we'll do that conversion. But I would give us a chance to write that in and come back with that rather
Okay.
than trying to do it on the fly. Yeah, but business days, if the
Right.
council desires us to do it on business days, we can come back on second reading and bring it as rewritten
Okay.
to be included as business days.
So, all right, so I would like to do it as an amendment. That way it comes back to us with all the information in it. So I make a motion to amend the ordinance to reflect, instead of hours, reflecting to business days for all the sections, section 3, section, for section 13-27, section 3A, 3A, 3C, 3D, B.
I mean, really, if you're going to go into that much detail, why don't you just let them read? Just let them redo it, and then you can visit with them. You can visit with them Thursday.
Oh,
I may not be here next Tuesday. I don't know. I may get hit by a bus. I don't know.
An RTA
All right?
bus?
Yeah.
Is Roland driving it?
Forgive me if I'm doing it this way. Okay.
We've got it, seriously, it's like 3:30, and we still have to finish
I
up
got you.
our.
I got you. And then
What's the
also,
easiest way? Is this the easiest way to do it?
yes.
Peter?
And
The easiest way is just say convert hours to days. We got,
Business day.
Convert
Business
hours
days.
to days,
The
that's
business
it.
days.
We
second
are
it.
all
if
on the
I
same
had
team.
complete
We support what you're
100%
saying.
trust in our
Let's
staff,
go.
I would do it.
No.
I thought it was
We can vote
110.
against
I
it.
second that. Let's go move on to
Let's move on,
days.
just convert whatever to days
hours
and
to
let's.
days.
Hours
move
to
on.
days.
We
Business
That's
get it.
that's my
And we
motion.
support what you're doing. Okay,
Second.
we have a second. All in favor say
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no.
Aye.
Thank you, Craig. Motion carries.
I make a motion to approve as amended.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The motion carries. God bless us. Okay. That, God bless us is what I said. Okay, well, I believe that concludes our meeting. So with that, and there being no further business, I adjourn this meeting.